Imagine this. You come home from school expecting your dad to greet you with a smile, but instead he's standing there with a gun. Now imagine. That same man later tells police he did it because he loved you. This is not fiction. This is the story of John List, the man who murdered his entire family to save their souls. For 18 years he vanished, a ghost in plain sight, until one of the most chilling manhunts in American history finally caught up with him. And wait until you hear how they found him. It's the twist that still shocks FBI agents to this day. It's 1971, Westfield, New Jersey, a quiet, postcard-perfect suburb. On the outside, the List family is the embodiment of the American dream, a towering 19-room Victorian mansion, manicured lawn, Sunday mornings at church. John List, a respected bank vice president, Sunday school teacher, and loving father of 3. Patricia, 16, John Jr., 15, and Frederick, 13. His wife Helen, elegant and devoted. His elderly mother Alma, living upstairs. To neighbors, they were flawless. The kind of family you waved to and thought, they've got it all. But behind that perfect smile, John List was living a double life. In early 1971, John quietly lost his job. He didn't tell a soul, not his wife, not his kids, not even his mother. Every morning, he still put on his suit, picked up his briefcase, kissed his family goodbye, and drove to the train station. But instead of commuting to work, he'd sit there all day in his car, reading newspapers, staring into nothing, drowning in shame. The bills piled up. The mortgage was overdue. Savings evaporated, and John kept pretending. John wasn't just a man with financial troubles. He was a man obsessed with religious purity. Raised to believe that poverty led to sin, and sin led to eternal damnation, he began to see his financial collapse as a spiritual threat. In his twisted mind, the logic formed. If his family fell into poverty, they might lie, steal, abandon their faith. But right now, they were pure, church-going, moral, saved. And if he could end their lives now, he could freeze them in that state forever. In John's deranged theology, murder became salvation. He even likened himself to Abraham, willing to sacrifice his own family for God. This wasn't a sudden snap. For months, John planned the murders with the cold precision of an accountant balancing a ledger. He rehearsed the order, bought the ammunition, and on the morning of November 9, 1971, he put on his suit and tie, ate breakfast with his family, and watched them leave for the day. Then he waited. When Helen returned from errands, John walked into the kitchen, raised his gun, and shot her in the back of the head. No warning, no words. She collapsed instantly. John dragged her body into the grand ballroom, laid her on a sleeping bag. Then he went upstairs. His 84-year-old mother was making lunch. He kissed her cheek, then shot her in the face. He couldn't move her frail body down the stairs, so he left her there. Hours later, the school day ended. Patricia came home first. She barely stepped inside before John pulled the trigger. Next, 13-year-old Frederick. Same fate. Finally, John Jr. arrived, the athletic, lively boy who carried his father's name. But John didn't go down quietly. Neighbors later said they heard several gunshots in quick succession. John List would later admit his son twitched after the first shot, so he kept firing. When it was over, 5 members of his own family lay dead. John carefully arranged their bodies in the ballroom side by side, covered with blankets, like they were sleeping. He turned on the house lights and classical music, letting it echo through the empty halls. He called Patricia's school, claiming the family was going to visit an ailing relative. He sat at his desk and wrote a 5-page confession letter to his pastor, explaining in theological terms why he had sent them to heaven. Then he walked out of the mansion, locked the door, and vanished. For nearly a month, no one suspected a thing. It wasn't until neighbors noticed lights burning day and night and the mail piling up that police forced their way in. What they found was the stuff of nightmares. 5 decomposed bodies laid out in the ballroom and that same haunting classical music still playing. The manhunt was massive. FBI, state police, local cops. John List had erased himself from existence. No photographs, no credit trail, no relatives in contact. For 18 years, he lived as Robert Clark, an accountant in Colorado, then Virginia. He remarried, attended church, hosted barbecues. To friends, he was dull but dependable. To the FBI, he was a phantom. 1989, the case aired on America's Most Wanted. There was one problem: no recent photos existed. So the show hired forensic sculptor Frank Bender to create a clay bust of what List might look like after nearly 2 decades. The result? A balding, bespectacled man with jowls eerily accurate. That night, a woman named Wanda Flannery was watching the show. She froze. The bust looked exactly like her old neighbor, Bob Clark. She called the police. On June 4, 1989, FBI agents walked into an accounting office in Virginia and arrested Robert Clark. At first, he denied it. But confronted with fingerprints and evidence, he quietly admitted the truth. He was John List. In 1990, John List was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms. Even in prison, he showed no remorse, insisting he had saved his family. In 2008, at age 82, John List died behind bars, still believing they would meet again in heaven. This case isn't just about murder, it's about how faith can be twisted into something deadly, how self-deception can turn love into betrayal. What do you think? Was John List insane or evil? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the darkest corners of the human mind, subscribe, because the next story will leave you just as haunted.